You know, King Tut's tomb totally shaped how we view ancient Egyptian wealth today. But when you actually crunch the historical data, that perception is completely upside down. In this explainer, we're ranking all the dynasties of ancient Egypt by their actual gold, land, and legacy. And let me tell you, the pharaoh sitting at number one controlled more wealth than literally all of today's billionaires combined. What shocked me most, though, is who that actually is. So let's just dive right in.
We're starting at the very bottom of our list at number 20. And get this, despite his massive worldwide fame, King Tutankhamun is actually the absolute poorest pharaoh on our list. No joke. The Boy King, the guy whose golden death mask is basically the universal symbol of ancient wealth. He barely even registers when you look at the actual economic data of the Egyptian empires.
It really just highlights this massive disconnect between modern fame and historical reality. I mean, compare his priceless global fame today to his actual estimated net worth during his 10-year reign. It was a tiny $2 million in today's money. To put that into perspective for you, Tutankhamun had less actual wealth than a mid-level social media influencer today. The only reason we even know his name is because his tomb was so small and obscure that grave robbers just missed it entirely.
So how did he end up so poor? It's an incredible story, actually. He didn't just happen to be broke. He inherited an empire that was completely bankrupt. Looking at the 18th dynasty, Tut's predecessor, the heretic king Akhenaten, he completely drained the treasury, building a brand new religious capital called Amarna, a city which, by the way, was eventually abandoned entirely. So Tut was left with essentially zero, forcing him into that tiny tomb. And the guys who came after him, like Horemheb, they were military men who inherited empty vaults and a shrinking empire. The gold was just gone.
Which brings us to a truly baffling anomaly. We have this mysterious ruler, Neferu-Aten. Just imagine this for a second. 2, maybe 3 years on the throne, absolutely zero wealth to their name, and we don't even know who they really were. Some historians think she might have been Nefertiti, but the reality is she held the throne of the world's greatest empire with absolutely no gold to show for it. Her entire legacy is just made of question marks.
Now, let's jump to the middle class of pharaohs, because this is where the economic swings get totally wild. Take Amenhotep III. He was the dazzling pharaoh, just dropping cash on 250 massive statues of himself and throwing these incredibly lavish festivals. His estimated wealth, $50 billion. But then you look at his son and successor, Akhenaten. Like we talked about, all that $50 billion was completely squandered on his religious revolution, leaving the whole empire totally bankrupt.
The really crucial takeaway here is just how fast staggering wealth can vanish. The 18th dynasty experienced a devastating financial crash. They literally went from a $50 billion golden age under Amenhotep III straight down to a paltry $2 million by the time his grandson Tutankhamun took over. In just 3 generations, poof, the treasury was completely wiped out.
But hey, we're not just here to talk about the bankrupt rulers, right? Let's enter the top 10, where things get incredibly serious. Sitting at number 10 is Ramesses III, who's often considered the last great pharaoh. He commanded a staggering $80 billion, built the magnificent temple of Medinet Habu, and fought off the Sea Peoples. But you know what? All that immense wealth couldn't protect him. He met an incredibly dark, sudden end, assassinated in a harem conspiracy. Literally a knife in the dark ended his golden reign.
Now we're entering the imperial rich. We're talking wealth that rivals modern nations. Thutmose III comes in with a cool $100 billion. But if you look slightly higher, his predecessor and aunt, the female pharaoh Hatshepsut, actually beat him out with $120 billion. And then climbing even higher than that, we've got Ramesses II, sitting at a massive $150 billion.
So, how exactly did they get so ridiculously wealthy? Well, their strategies couldn't have been more different. Thutmose III, who is basically the Napoleon of Egypt, got his $100 billion entirely through war, fighting 17 different military campaigns to conquer the surrounding lands. But his aunt Hatshepsut, she built an even bigger fortune through peace. She launched these massive trade expeditions to Punt and built incredible monuments like Deir el-Bahari. That's right, trade and architecture actually out-earned the ultimate warrior king.
And then there's Ramses the Great, 66. That is the magic number for his legacy. He spent 66 years on the throne, relentlessly building massive monuments. Think of those colossal statues at Abu Simbel. But here's the catch. Even with $150 billion, you can still overspend. Ramses II built so much for so long that he eventually left Egypt in terrible debt. It just goes to show, getting rich is one thing, staying rich is a whole other ballgame.
Okay, we are officially entering the super rich tier now.
The top 5. Coming in at number 5 is Khafre with $200 billion. And you definitely know his work. He built the second Great Pyramid at Giza and, of course, the Eternal Sphinx. That massive limestone monument with Khafre's face and a lion's body was designed to send one single eternal message to anyone who looked at it: pure, unadulterated power.
Moving up to number 4, we've got Sinasurf III with $250 billion. And this guy brilliantly illustrates a totally different approach to power. Unlike the idealized, perfectly smooth faces of other pharaohs, Sinasurf demanded that his statues be honest, brutal, and, quite frankly, ugly. It's such a shocking PR move. He actually wanted deep lines and heavy, tired eyes. Why? Because he wanted to prove that true power and wealth aren't about pretty aesthetics. They're about sheer endurance. And he absolutely endured for nearly 40 years, making Egypt a total superpower.
At number 3 sits Amenemhat III, commanding $300 billion. And what you really should take away from this is how he earned it. He didn't fight a single major war. Not one! Instead, he mastered engineering. He built the massive 250-kilometer-long Bar Youssef Canal, and he completely monopolized the gold mines of Nubia. He proved that brilliant infrastructure and resource control can amass way more wealth than the greatest standing armies.
So, who beats out the warriors, the traders, and the mastermind engineers? We have finally reached the undisputed, #1 richest pharaoh in all of human history, the man who built the only surviving wonder of the ancient world, Khufu.
To really wrap your head around his wealth, you just have to look at the mind-boggling physical scale of his legacy, the Great Pyramid. We are talking about 2.3 million individual stone blocks. Each one of those blocks weighs 2.5 tons, and he stacked them 146 meters into the sky. This single structure stood as the tallest building on planet Earth for 3,800 years. It's just unbelievable.
And when you translate that crazy scale into modern economics, you get this jaw-dropping number, $500 billion. That is the bare minimum estimated wealth required for Khufu to construct his eternal legacy. Think about that. That is far more wealth than the richest modern billionaires combined, all controlled by just one man.
Now, you might be wondering, how on earth did we arrive at that staggering number, especially since his pyramid was robbed completely empty in antiquity? Well, breaking down the modern construction costs reveals the truth. The materials alone would be $5 billion. The labor, we're talking 20,000 workers laboring for 20 full years, that costs $10 billion. Add $2 billion for the lost gold capstone, and another $20 billion for the surrounding temples, harbor, and workers' city. The pyramid itself is the treasure, proving he had an absolutely unmatched treasury.
But here is the totally devastating twist of Khufu's story. On one hand, you have a $500 billion pyramid that has literally dominated the skyline of human history. On the other hand, his only surviving personal artifact. Despite all that unimaginable wealth, the only image we have of Khufu today is a tiny, fragile, finger-sized ivory figurine measuring just 7.5 centimeters tall. I mean, he was so incredibly rich that he could afford to have his wealth looted, his name cursed by later historians, and his personal identity nearly erased, and yet his stone mountain still remains.
Which leaves us with this final, really profound question to end our explainer on. What actually lasts? Khufu spent $500 billion on a massive, undeniable mountain of stone, and despite losing everything else, we still know his name today. But then you look at Tutankhamun, the absolute poorest pharaoh on our list, who is the most famous figure in ancient history today entirely because his tiny tomb was swallowed by obscurity and hidden away from thieves. So, if you were a pharaoh, what would you choose for your legacy? The massive, unavoidable visibility of a $500 billion stone pyramid, or the quiet, protective obscurity of a hidden tomb?